European leaders have continued to respond to Theresa May's vision of Brexit. Yesterday, the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, he stuck a relatively conciliatory tone, saying he wanted a fair deal without any hostility. However, the Maltese Prime Minister, Joseph Muscat, said that the deal should be inferior to membership. It came as Boris Johnson, on a trip to India, took aim at the French president, warning him not to hit the UK with punishment beatings in the manner of some World War II movie. You can always depend on Boris Johnson. Joining us now from the European Parliament in Strasbourg is the MEP, Manfred Weber, the chairman of the centre-right EPP grouping in the European Parliament. Welcome to the programme, Mr. Weber. Are you so worried that others might want to leave the European Union that you need to be seen to give Britain a really bad deal?
After the Brexit, we experience now that European-wide the polls are signaling that the people understand how important Europe is, because London has a problem, not Berlin, not Paris, not Rome has a problem. So with Brexit, everybody sees how dangerous it is to leave this European Union.
Really?
That's why I have no problem with this. And we are ready for a fair deal. The European Parliament is a parliament of consent in the end, and we are ready for a fair deal. But we have to discuss what fair means. You
don't think that the European mainstream political establishment, of which you are a distinguished member, faces troubles when Geert Wilders is clearly ahead in the polls in Holland, and Marine Le Pen could easily come first in the first round of the French elections? You don't think these are problems for people like you?
Absolutely. There are problems for all of us, I would say. Because when they are winning, who want to destroy our partnership approach? For example, to have a good trade deal. Marine Le Pen makes campaign against the single market because in France the biggest problem is the unemployment rate. So everybody has its problem, and the question is, how can we solve them? Is it better to split up the European Union, the European member states, or is it better to work together? That is the approach behind. And frankly speaking, when I hear the words from Boris Johnson, then it's exactly what I mean. To provoke each other. To say to each other that we don't like each other and so on. That is not the way how we should work. And Boris Johnson is behaving like a clown, and he's taking really the credibility of
Boris
the government.
Johnson isn't here to defend himself, so he's not here to defend himself. So it's an easy pop for you. Let's try to come back to the substance. When you look at what's happening in Holland, in France, the ongoing Italian political and financial crisis, Mrs. Merkel facing a very tough election coming up in September, have you learned nothing from the Brexit vote?
Well, I have learned a lot from the Brexit vote. For example, that nobody explained to the British people what Europe is all about. For example, when we talk about trade, Theresa May made clear statements on trade. So what is EU? What is EU? EU is the single market. That is a free trade zone. That was the general idea of the whole European Union. That is what the Brits always wanted. That was the idea of Europe. Now you say you want to leave the European Union. I respect this. That's the outcome of Brexit. But on the other hand, you say I want to have a free trade agreement, which leads to a situation where nothing will change. So do you want to leave the single market, or you don't want to leave the single market? That is the question on the table.
There are many countries,
you can call it...
Mr. Weber, there are many countries who have free trade agreements with the EU, the most recent Canada, which are not members of the single market.
Absolutely.
So why can't Britain have that?
And they will never get, Canada, India, others will never get the same status like EU members have inside of the European Union, of this free trade zone, which created during the last decades so much positive development for all of us, for Britain, for Germany, for all of us. And that is what some want to destroy now. I fight for it, others can destroy it. That's a normal democratic process. And I'm elected and Boris Johnson is elected. So let's discuss.
If it's so positive, why has there now been for almost a decade mass youth unemployment in the Eurozone, and that it's only this year, at the end of last year, that the European Union managed in GDP terms to get back to the size it was in 2008? Why is that so positive? Britain's 15% bigger than 2008, America 20% bigger.
Absolutely fair question, but I can answer this question with another question. Why Spain has now a growth rate of 3%, why Ireland has a growth rate of 5%, why Germany has a very stable development. All of
because
them are
they've
members
slashed
of the European
wages,
Union.
Mr.
So
Weber. In Spain, they slashed real wages by 20%, and there is still 40% youth unemployment in Spain.
Is there a chance of an answer or is there no chance of an answer? So
Carry on.
I want to answer your question. You want to interview me, and that is the background of our meeting here. That's why I want to give you a reaction. The question is that when it comes to growth, the most important responsibility about social welfare, about the question to do a labor market reform and so on, all these questions are national responsibilities. So don't come with the arguments that Europe is responsible for everything. That is the easy question from all the national politicians who did this during decades, that Brussels is always responsible and the national headquarters is always positive. That is not true. We have problems with bureaucracy for sure, but others have also their tasks to do.
Still not
and that's
clear.
why please be fair.
I'm still not clear what the lesson you've learned from the Brexit vote, other than just business as usual. You just want to repeat the same arguments, behave in the same way. Is it going to change? Is it not going to change given all the political challenges that Europe faces this year, are you not changing your behavior in any way?
We had, during the last years, too less engagement to convince people why Europe is needed. No national politician did this, and even European politicians didn't do so. I give you another example. When we talk about trade, I am still thinking single market is a good thing. And I give you another example about fight against terror. Do you think that we need now a common jihadist list in the European Union? I think we need it. And that's why we work in the European Parliament on such a common jihadist list, that our police forces, our intelligence forces are strongly working together. That is the idea of Europe. It's not about bureaucracy, it's not about institution, it's about very practical things. And I learned with my meeting with David Davis, I learned that Britain wants to stay in this unity of exchange of data. That is part of Europe. And that's why I have no idea what Brexit means for the moment. You want to leave, but I learned that in the exchange of data you want to stay, in the single market, in the fair trade agreement you want to stay, in the question of exchange between the universities on a research area in Europe. Oxford and others want to stay. So what are you leaving? What do you want to do? That is the question on the table. Don't talk about bureaucracy and Europe and Brussels and bureaucrats.
I haven't
Please
mentioned
talk about facts,
bureaucracy,
and that's
Mr.
why
Weber,
I'm in favor of this partnership approach.
What do you say to Piercarlo Padone, the finance minister of Italy, not a noted Eurosceptic? He's just said the problem with Europe is Europe, that people don't have faith in Europe anymore.
Then he has to think about himself, because he's a politician who wants Europe. He is dealing with the euro. He's sitting together with the Eurogroup colleagues. Let's face the reality. The reality is that we have a global problem on the table. When we see how big our member states are, the nations in the European Union are, how competitive they are, how big they are from an economic point of view, then we have to face the reality that one single member state of this European Union alone cannot compete with China and others. That is the reality. And that's why I think, you can think otherwise, in other direction, but I think it's better to combine our forces and to fight for our common interest about the social model of Europe, for example, which is unique in the global level, to fight for these common values together. That is what I believe in, and that is what I fight for. Well, I'm a Democrat. When others have a majority, I will respect this.
Well, if you're a Democrat, no doubt you respect the result of the decision here on June the 23rd. But it has a personal element. It does affect people. It affects EU citizens living in Britain, of which there are about 3 million with their families, and UK citizens living in the EU, which are about over 1 million. Why not just take them off the table now? Why not say that any EU citizen in the UK has guaranteed rights indefinitely, and any UK citizen living in the EU has guaranteed rights indefinitely? Why not do that now?
Full support. Full support, we can agree on this. That is a starting point already. That is a fair treatment.
But Mrs. Merkel has turned that down.
We want to have this fair treatment, and at the moment, nobody wants to start negotiations. You know the principle from the European Council.
But I'm saying that my point I'm putting to you is that they should not be part of the negotiations. And yet, when Mrs. May made that offer to the German Chancellor, she turned it down. Why make these people part of the negotiations?
Please don't be surprised when Angela Merkel and other leaders in Europe will say, first of all, please, London, give us a triggering of the Article 50. Please start the procedure. It is not a fair question. For the moment, we only have speeches. We only have declarations. Formally, there is nothing on the table. That's why it is simply fair when I ask and we ask London, please put formally your questions on the table. Do it now.
So,
and then we can start with the negotiations. I think that's also
so our citizens
fair.
on both sides of the channel should be a bargaining chip.
If we agree on the principle that we are not punishing Britain for leaving the European Union, then on the other hand, I would also ask, don't make pressure on the rest of the European Union in saying that you want to deliver with the other economic model, which is a state taxation.
I merely asked about the EU
which
citizens,
can create a lot
Mr.
of
Weber.
problems for all of this.
I merely
Yes,
asked about
I
the EU
already
citizens, but you seem
clarified
that you don't want to do anything
I
at the
clarified
moment
this.
about them.
I clarified this. I clarified this. I'm totally ready to go this step to respect the current situation and respect the citizens. I said this already.
All right.
So I only want to ask you if we are not creating any kind of additional aggressivity inside of the negotiations.
All right.
Say this, please, to Johnson when you see him the next time. Then I will talk with my friends to also reduce the pressure. We are ready to negotiate, but leaving the European Union means leaving the European Union.
All right.
And that is
We got that, Mr. Weber.
That is partnership on security,
you.
and that is a problem for London and not so much for us.
I do many things in this world, Mr. Weber, but taking messages to Boris Johnson is not one of them. I'll leave you to do that directly.
I understand this.
Thank you for joining us.